Hey, this is Mark, and this is episode 5 of the Why Are We Still Doing This podcast. Why are we still getting emotionally invested in professional sports as grown adults? Sports fans, you remember that feeling when your team made it to the Super Bowl for the first time in 30 years, only to get trounced by a team you felt like was a bunch of bums? You remember that feeling of waking up, going to work, everyone is really quiet, like it's a funeral parlor. Everyone's like, I can't believe they ran the ball on third down. Everyone is mentally, emotionally, and physically exhausted. Nothing is getting done this Monday at work. First off, I'm tired of seeing Sergio and his trophy wife, or these hedge fund bros, sitting courtside during the NBA playoffs every single night. Just once, I'd love to see Bob, the transmission guy from the town garage in their place, still in his oil-stained coveralls, just destroying a Nacho Supreme from the concession stand, inches away from world-class athletes, just living his best life. I wish the NBA could do regular guy night and offer all courtside seats to regular blue-collar middle-class people. Courtside seats for $49.99. Wouldn't that be much more entertaining? Like you've got a family of 4 with 2 really young, cranky kids spilling a jumbo popcorn and a slush puppy all over the court, which causes a player to slip and miss the game-winning shot. Then right next to them, you've got some kids in their early 20s, their entire body painted with team colors, pounding $15 cups of Coors Light, yelling at opposing players with comments about their wives. Bleacher creatures just front and center. And I feel like creative heckling is no longer tolerated at sporting events anymore. For example, at Fenway Park one time when the Red Sox were playing the Yankees, my friends, literally like 50 yards from right field, shouted in unison, "Gary Sheffield, we had sex with your wife!" My guess is that would be an immediate ejection nowadays, but it's way more creative than "you're a bum" or "you suck." I talked about the most recent NBA game I went to in my last podcast. My daughter and I had a great time in Boston, hanging out, counting the number of Dunkin' Donuts within eyesight of each other. And I told her she could do some clothes shopping if she wanted during the day, but she only ended up buying a pair of athletic shorts from a Marshall store. And as we headed to the garden, I said, hey, originally my thought was if you had like a bunch of clothes you bought, we could rent a locker at the game, but since you only have this one pair of mesh shorts, do you mind just putting them on under the shorts that you're wearing? Because it's kind of ridiculous to pay $15 to rent a locker to put in a $16 pair of shorts. There's a no-bag policy at the Garden in Boston, and you can't even bring in a small handbag. And she goes, well, can you just put them under your shirt or something? And I said, well, you can't put them on under the shorts you're wearing? And I don't remember the specific reason why she couldn't, but being a good dad, I said, okay, I'll figure it out. And she goes, just shove them down your pants or something. And so to avoid paying for a locker, I took the pair of mesh shorts from Marshall's she bought and put them on the inside seat of my pants for the entire game. And it felt like I was wearing a diaper the entire night. And I kept expecting some security guard to flag me down and be like, Sir, is there a reason why it looks like your ass is so big? At the end of the night, as our train was getting close to its destination and we were the only people left, I pulled the shorts out of my pants and said, here's your shorts I've been farting on all night. Going to an NBA game as a dad in his 40s, you notice things you never did before, like those giant Swiffer mops with the team logo on the top that they bring out to wipe up sweat off the court. And you think, man, imagine how much quicker I could clean my kitchen floor with one of those, all while supporting the home team. I couldn't take my eyes off them the last time I was at a Celtics game. I thought, why are these not in the pro shop? And then I thought, how much do these guys get paid to mop up sweat? My guess is enough to make public school teachers upset. Or are they looking for experience as a professional curler with experience in the Olympic Games? Because it's pretty much the same motion, wiping up sweat off the court, compared with moving that squeegee across the ice. Curling is one of those Olympic Games where it's like, how did this become a thing? I think most Olympic athletes, when they're kids, they say, Mom, Dad, I want to win a race in the Olympics one day. Something, athletic. You don't hear, I want to play shuffleboard on ice in front of the world. Like, where do you even find curling? It's not like the local YMCA has a pickup curling league. And if you're interested in an Olympic future in curling, how do you practice? What's the approach if you don't have the equipment or the right environment? Are you just frantically scrubbing your kitchen floor with a squeegee and Fabuloso? Again, it's essentially that same motion they use, right? Just working on that back and forth scrubbing motion curlers use to slow down the disc or whatever it is. I know a lot of professional baseball players from areas like the Dominican Republic would use rocks and sticks to play baseball as kids when they had nothing else. Curlers are Olympic athletes, technically. And when they're done with the Olympics, what happens? There's no Major League Curling selling out Madison Square Garden. Do they just return to their day jobs as a bank teller or something? Like, hi, I'm Bob, lead teller here at South Bend Credit Union. I'm also an Olympic athlete. Excuse me while I go to Wendy's for my lunch break. Like, imagine being a curler in the Olympics and your kid invites you to career day at his school and you get up in front of a room of 13-year-olds and one of them asks, so what's your training regimen like? You got to be like counting your carbs, getting enough protein right, and you have to say, no, slow down. I'm not that kind of Olympic athlete. It's like how McDonald's is the official restaurant of the Olympics. You see that? Although I think that ended in like 2017 maybe. But at one point, McDonald's was the official restaurant of the Olympics. They should have clarified the sponsorship as the official restaurant of the Olympics, especially curling. You'll forever have the label of Olympic athlete, but you'll always have to be like, pump the brakes, okay? It's like how when my wife and I met, she thought I was a super bookworm because I told her about the trip I took with the Honor Society at my high school to Washington, D.C., my senior year of high school. And I later had to clarify that I was never in the Honor Society, but rather one of the 5 mediocre students who filled seats on the bus. But if you look in the yearbook, there I am with roughly 30-something smart people posing in front of the U.S. Capitol building. But wouldn't you know, out of all those people on that trip, I was maybe 1 of 5 to get a master's degree, which goes back to my point from a few episodes ago that high school will not necessarily define who you become later in life. And speaking of high school and sports, some of the worst people at youth sporting events are the parents who are constantly trying to coach from the sidelines. There's a big difference between encouraging and coaching. Yelling at the top of your lungs, "Yeah, Braden, woohoo, way to go!" No matter how obnoxious it may sound, especially to your child, is an example of healthy encouragement. However, if you're actively yelling, shouting from the stands in order to get your child's attention, to say something like, Amelia, you gotta move when she sets that pick, I'm going to suggest you stop right there. Players on the field or court have one voice they need to listen to, their coach. And regardless if you disagree with the coach's advice, that player has to listen to them. Adding one more voice to listen to is just going to stress them out even more, especially if it's the same voice that tells them to clean their room, do the dishes, and pick up dog poop in the yard. Sometimes I just have to remove myself from a group of parents at a youth sporting event because they just constantly think they know more than what the kids do. What are they doing out there? You hear them say. What was that? They got to get their act together. What they should have done is, please tell me, grown adult who hasn't done a sit-up since 3rd grade, what should these young athletes have done? I wish, and I've seen some teams do this, and I always forget to suggest, is at the end of the year have a players versus parents game. Basketball, softball, whatever, but mostly basketball. Just to see these incredibly out of shape parents huffing and puffing down the court, tear their quad, trying to go for a rebound, and when that happens, have one of the players look down at them while they're writhing in pain and say, "What are you doing? You should have stretched before coming out here." My daughter plays softball, travel softball in the summer, and softball has become, and I think youth sports in general, a little too much of a production sometimes. Most of these teams have nice, flashy uniforms that we could never dream of having growing up playing sports in the 80s and 90s, which I think is fine because if the teams look good, then they'll feel good. However, sometimes the coaches take it a step further with a matching shirt with the team logo and something on the back that says, Coach, or their last name with a number like 00. And I'm like, is it really necessary? We know you're a coach. You're in the third base box. And it seems like the flashier the coach's apparel, the more of a hothead they are. Sometimes. Not all are, from my experience, but some. And one of my daughter's coaches, I really appreciate him because he's not flashy at all. He'll show up to a tournament in a pair of and one shorts, an oversized t-shirt with a hole in it, just as comfortable as can be, and not a care in the world. But here's something that really bothered me. I saw a TikTok that was like, how many beers can my husband drink during my son's Little League game? Or something like that. And I'm like, why the hell are we celebrating this? It's sad. It's honestly really sad because parents have no clue how much their kids remember this stuff. Even when I go out with my kids, where it's just my daughter and I, or my son and I having dinner, I don't like to order a drink because I like to be present. I like to be present with them. And I know you're going to be like, oh, come on, can't just have one drink. I bust my ass 5 days a week. I can have a drink if I want. Kids are going to remember that. Kids are going to remember you drinking at their sporting events. Even though it's just a couple, kids are going to remember you being sneaky by pouring your White Claws into a Stanley mug. And as parents, we need to stop glorifying this kind of stuff. Is it that painful you have to sit through your kid's game without alcohol? Now, don't get me wrong, some of those 10U softball games are excruciatingly painful. The games are like 27-23. It's like a football score. Walk after walk after walk after walk. But I remember reading some of the comments on that particular TikTok, and the majority of them were like, yep, my dad did that, or my mom did that, or still remember that to this day. I guess what I'm trying to say is don't underestimate how much your kids remember stuff. Because if they're able to remember their parents sneaking beers into their Stanley Cups at softball games and not remember fun stuff they did with you, it was probably a little traumatic. It was probably embarrassing. So going back, why do grown men get so emotionally invested in professional sports? For one, all of us who've played a sport growing up dream of playing professionally and having that 3 balls, 2 strikes, 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th at bat. We dream of having that moment where we conquer, and we have troves of people adore us for it, be carried off the field like royalty, and have our name etched in immortality. We live vicariously through the players. Another part of why we get so fired up about sports is simply wanting to take pride in our hometown. People feel a sense of ownership of their home team. No one wants to have the place they live be labeled as Loserville, USA. When your team wins, life is good. When your team loses for 86 years, like the Red Sox did from 1918 to 2004, you want to throw a cinder block through your television. And when the team in the next town over is constantly winning, they're shoving it in your face any chance they get. Growing up, I was an angry sports fan. I mentioned this in my last show, but given the severity of my angst, I'm mentioning it again. And to this day, I will always root against any team from the state of New York, except the Buffalo Bills. I do not consider the Buffalo Bills to be from the state of New York. They're practically in Canada and don't have that typical persona of every other New York State sports fan. Big difference between Bills fans and Giants fans. Knicks, Yankees, Giants fans. I think of short Italian guys with receding hairlines, just eating pastrami sandwiches, talking with their hands. Bills fans are on another planet, okay? When you live in an area that gets 7,000 feet of snow a year, 7 months out of the year, and your team went to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost all of them, I'm going to say something's got to give. Other than the Sabres, this is your only team to root for. And when your whole gimmick, your whole identity is crashing through a folding table you bought at Costco, all while you're shirtless and it's 17 degrees outside, and you're in a blizzard, you've reached another level of sports fanaticism that defies rational thinking. Have you ever seen videos from Bills tailgate parties? Now, a lot of those people crashing through tables are more than likely in their 20s, are still fairly flexible and can handle some bumps and bruises, bounce back and go to work in the morning quite easily. But every now and again, you'll see some guy in his 40s just being like, fuck it, and just launch himself off the top of his Dodge Ram pickup truck and throw down a Macho Man Randy Savage-esque elbow drop through a table and kip right up into this tribal scream. All while the 12 Miller Lights he's consumed go to work and numb the pain of the separated shoulder he has no clue he just put upon himself. Those fans are absolutely nuts. And as a Patriots fan, if there is any team I'd like to see win other than New England, it's Buffalo. I'm always going to root for the lovable losers. Knowing the pain of seeing your team lose year after year, I get it. New York is feeling it right now. After the Yankees blew those World Series games last year, you could tell that they felt something they've never felt before. They were so cocky and so arrogant for so long in the 90s and early 2000s. When Aaron Judge hit that home run in the first inning of Game 5 of last year's World Series to put the Yankees up 2-0, all while down 3-1 in the series, y'all acted as if you won the whole thing after that. Seriously. And then 4 innings later came a massive collapse by the Yankees, and y'all didn't know how to handle it after the game. We haven't won a World Series in 15 years. Oh, that's cute. Sorry, but y'all have no idea what real sports pain is. Every team should have like a 30-year drought between titles. It's good for the fan base, makes them hungry, builds character. I will admit I was so disconnected from Major League Baseball after my first child was born. I might as well have owned a pink Red Sox hat and gotten a custom jersey with my last name on the back. What's with people getting their own last name on a replica jersey? I never got that. Like, is that part of your plan to sneak into the locker room? But ever since my daughter was born in 2012, I had absolutely no time to watch a 3-hour baseball game. I mean, when I watched baseball religiously on NESN, which is the New England Sports Network, they would have a pregame show, the actual 3-hour ball game, that was before a pitch clock, a postgame show called Extra Innings, followed by Extra Innings, a post-game show. Unless you're retired and don't garden for 30 hours a week, who has the time to watch that much baseball? I've also given up on playing fantasy baseball, something I played for well over 14 years. I'd spend hours a day researching, checking stats, totally ruining my productivity, all so I could tell my friends I was the winner of a virtual trophy courtesy of Yahoo Sports. There was a time when I wasn't watching baseball religiously, when I realized I really don't hate the Yankees as much as I used to. But that all came roaring back once my daughter got into sports and enjoyed watching baseball from time to time with me. And part of the reason why the hatred kind of went away for a while was because I simply had no clue who was on the team anymore. Back in the day, I was so emotionally invested in the game and it was frankly exhausting, despising a plethora of overpaid, some of them roided up douches on the Yankees, such as Gary Sheffield, Jason Giambi, Alex Rodriguez, Roger Clemens, Kevin Brown, Randy Johnson, Jorge Posada, Jeff Nelson, just to name a few. As we get older, we let go of grudges, hopefully. We grow up. I used to have a bumper sticker that said, "I don't break for Yankees fans." Pretty immature, right? Well, on second thought, I think it's still pretty funny. We learn to let things like a team loss roll off our shoulders, mostly because we have to put our energy into more productive activities, such as remembering to stop for milk on the way home from work, aka being an adult. I come home and spend time with my family, I play with my band, write comedy, and fix things around the house. The Red Sox have also won 4 World Series since 2004, which has eased the pain of the 86-year World Series drought. And if in 2004 you told Red Sox fans the team would win 4 World Series in the next 15 years, most fans would probably have laughed in your face. A friend of mine went to a Yankees-Red Sox game at Fenway Park with his daughter recently, and as they were heading out, he offered to take a family photo for a family of Yankee fans, and we both agreed that 20 years ago, he probably would have taken their phone, or camera at the time, and thrown it into the stands and ran. But again, the combination of growing older, winning 4 World Series in 20 years, and having a family of our own has softened us a bit. On the last show, I promised to tell a story of a guy who never washed his hands and almost caused me to self-sabotage and not finish my master's degree. Well, here it is. So, in the spring of 2015, I finished my Master of Education degree. And there was a guy much older than me in one of my classes who failed to wash his hands every single time he went to the bathroom. Well, I assume every time, as every time he didn't wash, I happened to be in there with him. Every time we'd have a break during class, and we both just so happened to stroll into the men's room together, he'd completely bypass the sink as if he was ignoring a homeless person asking for change. And he'd walk out in this sheepish, hunched-over manner, as if to say, yeah, I know, I've got poop on my hands. At least make me believe you're making an attempt to wash your hands. Make me feel confident that I won't walk out of here with a norovirus. Maybe turn on the water for a couple seconds or wave your hand underneath the paper towel dispenser. I'm sure part of his thinking was, Well, my grandparents survived diphtheria due to inadequate plumbing. I'm sure I'll be just fine. I felt as though even if I called him out for his lack of hand washing, his reaction would be similar to the Seven Dwarfs' response to Snow White's request of washing up before dinner. They say, "Wash? Why wash? We're not going nowhere." Here's the problem with all this. This guy was finishing a master's degree. This means that he has mastered something. An academic discipline, no less. Do you know what the percentage is of people in this country that have a master's degree? Less than 10%. So how is it possible that someone holding the title of master in anything somehow failed miserably in a life skill my daughter, who was 4 at the time, could do without prompting? Shouldn't she be awarded an advanced degree? So on the last day of class, we were to present our final projects. And it just so happened that this guy was to present just before I was. There was one problem. We were both doing a PowerPoint presentation which required fingers to touch computer keys. I sat in my chair watching this guy, almost in slow motion, fumble around a keyboard with his norovirus-saturated sausage fingers, knowing that in about 10 minutes I'd have to go sacrifice my upper extremities to this bacteria playground he's created. How can I go through with this? How am I supposed to use the same keyboard he did, knowing full well he hasn't washed his hands? I wanted to run out and pull the fire alarm just to give me a chance to sanitize the workspace we shared. I thought it would be a little ridiculous to say to the class, "Talk amongst yourselves while I squirt this bottle of Germ-X onto a paper towel and give the keys and mouse a little bath." I almost wanted to call him out on it right in front of everyone, you know. I'd basically be committing academic suicide by refusing to present my PowerPoint presentation and ultimately failing the class and not graduating. Very reminiscent of that Seinfeld episode where Jerry knows the chef didn't wash his hands before making his pizza. But hey, at least I know I wouldn't be spending the weekend shaking, sweating, and freezing at the same time on my bathroom floor. It would be just epic, though, to stand in front of everyone and very stoically state, "I choose not to present because of you," and point at the guy. Maybe at that point I could call an audible and present a lesson in hand washing and just stare at this guy the entire time. But in the end, graduation day came, and everyone in my class made it. We all had received our degrees, even Mr. Poopy Hands. Last month, my favorite animal in our house, our cat Klondike, had died. And it was very sudden. I should just say sudden because I don't know how much more sudden very sudden is than just regular sudden. He was only 10 years old. He was the weirdest cat I've ever owned. If he was a human, he would definitely score low on the SATs. But he had such a personality, which I know all cat owners will say. Klondike was the animal in the house that I talked to the most, sometimes more than humans. He was my son's best friend. He loved that cat so goddamn much. Klondike was a brick house. At his last weigh-in, he was down 16 ounces, which brought him to a whopping 24 pounds. He was like a butterball turkey with fur. And we originally got this cat because our other cat, who is now 16, was around 20 pounds and felt this spry young kitten would chase her and help slim her down. And it worked. However, Klondike gained that weight that our other cat lost. And he was such a weird cat for many reasons. He had the worst breath. It was a constant odor of tuna, baked haddock that had been left out at room temperature. And he loved to lick your face. Anytime I would be working out and was drenched in sweat and lying on the floor, he would make his way over to me and start licking my sweaty forehead. Or if I was sitting down after a workout and my legs were sweaty, he would just start licking away through my leg hair, just lapping up sweat. And my son could stick his face into Klondike's chest, and Klondike would just wrap his paws around my son's head, grab onto him, and just start licking his hair. He would lick and groom our oldest cat constantly, and he was probably the most affectionate cat I've ever known. But watching your child mourn the loss of a pet is just crushing. It's an entirely different level of sadness. You're sad because your cat died, and sad because seeing your child sad just doubles that. I was ugly crying for an entire day after it happened. And as I sit here and talk about it, I think, God, caring is exhausting. Like, having feelings is torturous. My neighbor had a cat that died last year, and he gave me some cat litter and a bunch of cans of food he had left over. And he's such a nice guy in his 80s, pretty old school, and I'm thinking, I highly doubt this guy sobbed as much as I did over losing a cat. For him, it was probably, shit. Well, that's a shame. And went back to his crossword puzzle. Caring is exhausting. I'll never understand people that get rid of an animal because it doesn't fit their lifestyle. For some people, owning a dog is very surface level. You feed it, walk it, and throw a tennis ball to it. Others have a much deeper emotional connection, like singing commercial jingles, but replacing the name of the product with your animal's name. Now, my dog can be a pain in the ass. He has a piercing bark and a lot of anxiety with new people, and we did a lot of work with him in the beginning. However, he's still got some issues. But I would never just say, yeah, we don't want him anymore. No, because I'm cursed with caring. I could never do that to an animal. Anyone can own a dog, but cat people are fucking crazy. I think cat owners are actually more likely to put their animals' names into commercial jingles than dog owners. The more songs about your cat, the more batshit crazy the owner. For example, in our house, with our cat Klondike, we would sing, "What would you do for a Klondike kitty?" Here's the difference between dog and cat owners. Dog people are going to put a red bow around the dog's neck for the family Christmas card. Cat people are going to go all out and force their cat into a tiny elf costume and have them be the only thing you see on the card. No people, just the cat. And by the way, I am a dog owner. I am not a dog dad. I already put enough mental and emotional energy into 2 humans. Anyway, I don't know about you, but I've never known any successful person who's owned a ferret. Was thinking about that recently. Like, if you're about to go in for brain surgery, and the doctor who is about to cut you open walks in and says, "Sorry I'm late, I had something come up with my 2 boys at home," and you say, "Oh, what school do your kids go to?" And the doctor says, "Oh, I don't have children. I was talking about Biscuit and Snickers. They're my 2 ferrets." My response would probably be, "I forgot to actually take today off from work, pull the IV out of my arm, and run out of the hospital like it was on fire." I knew 2 guys in college who owned ferrets, and the cage was always dirty. It got so dirty at one point, instead of thoroughly cleaning the cage, they just went out and bought a new cage. Dog owners are more likely to be anal retentive. Why? Because their pet does not pee or poop in the house. Anal retentive people don't buy pets that go to the bathroom in the house. Fortune 500 CEOs don't own a house skunk. Fortune 500 CEOs might own a horse, though. Poops and pees outside, but costs a lot of money. And whatever happened to going out and getting a dog from the pound? Since when are we buying a dog for the same amount of money that I paid for my first car? Actually, my first car was less than some of these dogs. I paid $2,000 in 1997 for my 1988 Plymouth Voyager. So, people, look, if you have the emotional capacity, go and adopt a dog at the pound or a rescue agency. Sometimes they're a lot of work, yes, but I just can't imagine going out and spending $4,000 on a dog. To me, it seems somewhat pompous and elitist, but maybe that's just me. Anyway, this has been episode 5 of the Why Are We Still Doing This podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. If you want to write to me, you can. Why are we still doing this podcast at gmail.com? Why are we still doing this podcast at gmail.com? I will see everybody in the next episode. See you soon. Bye.